This section of Getting Started with Oracle Visual Builder, I'm going to show you how to integrate data from external REST services into your application. Up until now, we worked with Business Object as the source of data. But Visual Builder also allows you to access external REST services. Let's create a connection to a service. We can define services by picking them up from catalogs, using their Swagger or OpenAPI spec, or like we'll do here, using their endpoint. We paste the URL to the REST service over here, and we also indicate what type of information we're getting back. In this case, we're getting a list of all the countries, so we're getting many records back. The operation is get, and we can then create a backend. We'll call this our countries backend. We can specify what type of authentication this REST service requires. In our case, we don't require authentication, and whether this service support calls or not over here. In the next step, we're going to define the service name. So we're going to call this the get countries. Can add a description and any parameters we need in the request. Then we can test our REST service over here. We can see the response and save it as an example response. This then populates the response area, which defines the structure of data that will be returned. Let's create this endpoint. All right, if we now go back to our application, and we'll take the other part of our application, and over here we want to use services. In the data palette, we now have access to the service we defined, get countries, with the endpoint to get many countries. Drag and drop it into the page. We can, for example, create a list, choose a layout for the list, and populate the specific fields we're interested in the specific slots. So let's indicate, for example, the flag as the leading slot, and we'll switch this one to be an image. In the default slot, we'll have name. We can add aspects like the capital as the secondary slots and the native name over here. In the metadata slot, maybe we want to indicate the population. Primary key is going to be our Alpha2 code. Next and finish, we'll now create a page where data is fetched from our REST service. In addition to creating pages that are just on REST services, you can mix and match business objects and REST services. Let's go back to our Edit Employee page over here. Right. Over here, we have a country field that is a 2-letter code. Maybe we want to add the ability to edit and select a country from a list. To do that, we're going to use a component called a selection component. We're going to use a select single. I'm going to add it to our form, and then we can just move it around to be the second field over here. Okay. And we're going to add option to this field. This time, using a quick start to add option, we also have access to our get countries service. And we're going to show the name and return the Alpha2 code. In the general properties for this field, we can update it to say the label is country, and the data for this is the value is going to be saved into the employee's own country field over here. This now creates basically a mapping between those two fields over here, country and country here. Now if we actually run the page, we can pick up another country and see the code being changed over on the left side, or we can choose the other way around, update the country here and see the list updated on the right side. So this is how we integrate another service into the same user interface.